There comes a moment in life when you realize that constantly proving your worth is what's actually lowering it. The more you chase attention, approval, or validation, the cheaper your presence begins to feel. Not because you lack value, but because value is never meant to be begged for. It is meant to be recognized. When you're always available, always explaining yourself, always trying to be understood, people stop appreciating you. Familiarity without boundaries creates comfort, and comfort kills respect. Absence, on the other hand, creates reflection. It creates curiosity. It creates curiosity. It creates realization. Letting them miss you is not about manipulation or ego. It's about self-respect. It's about knowing that your time, energy, and presence are not unlimited resources. When you step back, when you stop overgiving, when you stop forcing connections, people are left alone with the weight of your absence, and that's when they finally feel your value. Your silence speaks louder than your explanations. Your distance teaches lessons your words never could. When you stop chasing, you give others the chance to meet you where you stand or lose access to you entirely. Raising your value means choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. It means being okay with being misunderstood rather than over explaining. It means walking away from places where you are tolerated instead of celebrated. The moment you stop trying to be everywhere, you become unforgettable where it actually matters. When you are always available, replying instantly, showing up whenever called, adjusting your schedule for others, and placing their needs before your own, you may believe you are being kind, loyal, or supportive. But over time, this constant availability quietly changes how people perceive you. Human psychology does not value what is unlimited. Anything that feels endlessly accessible starts to feel ordinary, and ordinary things are rarely protected, respected, or appreciated. This is not because people are ungrateful by nature, but because the mind is wired to value scarcity and effort. When someone knows you will always be there no matter how they treat you, they stop being careful with you. They stop considering your time. They stop weighing their words. They stop thinking before making demands. Your presence becomes something they assume rather than something they earn. This assumption slowly erodes respect. You might notice that people cancel plans last minute, respond late while expecting instant replies from you, or come to you only when they need something. None of this happens suddenly. It builds quietly, step by step, as your overavailability teaches them that access to you has no cost. Overavailability also sends an unspoken message that your life revolves around others, that your priorities are flexible, but theirs are fixed, that your time is less valuable than theirs. Even if this is not what you believe internally, behavior communicates louder than intention. People judge value based on actions, not words. If you consistently drop your own needs, goals, or rest to accommodate others, you are unconsciously telling them that your time is negotiable and your presence is easy to obtain. Another hidden danger of overavailability is emotional exhaustion. When you give too much of yourself without limits, you slowly drain your energy, patience, and emotional clarity. You may begin to feel unseen, underappreciated, or taken for granted. This inner resentment often grows silently because you told yourself you were just being nice. But kindness without boundaries turns into self neglect. And self neglect always lowers how others treat you because you have already lowered yourself in your own actions. People are also less likely to invest emotionally in someone who is always present. When there is no risk of losing you, there is no urgency to value you deeply. Effort decreases when certainty is guaranteed. If someone knows you will forgive every time, stay no matter what, and remain accessible even when disrespected, they have no reason to rise to a higher standard. Over availability removes the natural balance of give and take that healthy relationships require. This does not mean becoming cold, distant, or unkind. It means understanding that your availability should reflect your self worth. Healthy availability is intentional, not automatic. It is given where there is respect, reciprocity, and appreciation. When you begin to choose when and where you show up, people start noticing the shift. They become more aware of your absence, more mindful of your presence. and more respectful of your boundaries. Reducing overavailability is uncomfortable at first because it goes against the habit of pleasing others. You may fear disappointing people or being misunderstood, but discomfort is often the price of growth. The moment you stop being constantly accessible, you allow space for people to realize your value on their own. You allow relationships to rebalance. Some people will step up and respect you more. Others may fade away, and that itself is information about how they truly saw you. LP. Value is not created by how much you give, but by how wisely you give. When your presence becomes intentional instead of automatic, limited instead of unlimited, people begin to treat it as something meaningful. Over availability teaches people that you are always there. Elective availability teaches them that you matter. When you create distance, whether emotional, mental, or physical, you create a pause, and that pause forces awareness. Constant presence keeps people distracted. Absence removes distraction and replaces it with reflection. When you are no longer always there to respond, support, fix, or reassure, others are left alone with the space you once filled. In that space, they begin to notice what your presence actually meant. Absence works because it disrupts routine. Human beings grow accustomed to patterns quickly. When someone becomes part of daily life without limits, their presence blends into the background. Messages, conversations, favors, and emotional support begin to feel expected rather than special. But when that pattern breaks, the mind reacts. Suddenly, what was once ordinary becomes noticeable. The silence where your voice used to be creates contrast, and contrast sharpens perception. This awareness is not immediate. At first, people may not even register what has changed. They might assume you are busy or distracted. But as time passes, the lack of your presence starts to feel heavier. Small moments remind them of you. Situations where you would normally help, listen, or show up. This is when awareness turns into realization. They recognize not just that you are absent, but what they lost in that absence. Absence also removes emotional cushioning. Absence also removes emotion. When you are always available, you soften consequences for others. You forgive quickly, tolerate disrespect, and absorb emotional weight that isn't yours to carry. When you step back, people are forced to face the impact of their behavior without your constant support. They become aware of how much they relied on your patience, understanding, or stability. This awareness often leads to a deeper appreciation that words and explanations could never create. There is also a psychological element of desire tied to distance. The mind values what requires effort to access. When access is removed or limited, curiosity increases. People begin to wonder what you are doing, how you are feeling, and why you are no longer as present. This curiosity is not about ego. It is about human nature. Distance triggers reflection, and reflection triggers emotional reassessment. Absence gives people the chance to measure your value without influence. When you are present, your actions may go unnoticed because they are ongoing. When you are gone, people must evaluate the difference between life with you and life without you. This comparison is powerful. It reveals whether you are adding peace or chaos, support or stress, depth or distraction. Awareness grows through comparison, not persuasion. Importantly, absence also protects your energy. While others are reflecting on your absence, you are reclaiming space for yourself. You are no longer pouring into situations that do not pour back into you. This self-focus strengthens your sense of identity, which further raises how others perceive you. People sense when someone is grounded, self-directed, and no longer seeking validation through constant availability. Not everyone will respond to absence in the same way. Some people will feel your absence and step forward with respect and effort. Others may react with frustration or entitlement, revealing that they valued your access more than your presence. This reaction is clarity. Absence does not just create awareness in others. It reveals truth to you, Yeah. Creating absence is not about punishment or control. It is about allowing natural consequences to exist. When you stop filling every gap, stop answering every call, and stop fixing every issue, people are given the opportunity to see you clearly. Awareness grows not because you demanded it, but because your absence made your value impossible to ignore. When you constantly explain yourself, you slowly teach people that your worth is negotiable. Explanation, when overused, becomes a defense mechanism rather than a tool for clarity. You start justifying your choices, your boundaries, your emotions, and even your silence as if they require approval. But the truth is, people who genuinely respect you do not need constant explanations to understand you. They recognize it through consistency, integrity, and presence, not through arguments or speeches. The moment you feel the urge to over-explain, it is often a sign that you are seeking validation rather than mutual understanding. You may believe that if you just say the right words, people will finally see your intentions, your effort, or your pain. But explanations rarely change how someone chooses to see you. They only give others more material to question, dissect, or dismiss. Instead of elevating your position, excessive explanation often lowers it because it places you in a position of proving rather than standing. Self-respect means knowing when silence is more powerful than words. It means accepting that being misunderstood is sometimes the cost of protecting your dignity. When you explain everything, you hand over control of your narrative to people who may not care to understand it fairly. You invite judgment into spaces where boundaries should exist. No, silence, on the other hand, sets a clear line. It communicates confidence. It signals that your decisions are not open for debate. There is also a subtle imbalance created when one person is always explaining and the other is always evaluating. The explainer becomes smaller in the dynamic while the listener gains authority. Over time, this imbalance affects how people treat you. They begin to question you more, challenge you more, and respect you less, not because you are wrong, but because you have positioned yourself as someone who must justify their existence. Self-respect corrects this imbalance by removing unnecessary explanations from the equation. Choosing not to explain does not mean you lack communication skills or emotional maturity. It means you understand discernment. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning, your emotions, or your inner world. Some people use explanations not to understand you, but to control, invalidate, or manipulate you. When you stop explaining yourself to such people, you remove their leverage. You no longer give them the power to twist your words or make you doubt your own reality. Self-respect also requires trusting yourself. When you are secure in your decisions, you do not feel compelled to defend them constantly. You understand that your choices are valid because they align with your values, not because others agree with them. This inner trust changes your energy. People can sense when someone is grounded versus when someone is seeking approval. Grounded energy commands respect without effort. Another overlooked aspect is emotional economy. Explaining yourself repeatedly drains emotional energy that could be used for growth, focus, and peace and appease. Each explanation reopens the same emotional loop, keeping you stuck in justification mode. Self-respect closes that loop. It allows you to conserve your energy and invest it where it truly matters. When people notice that you are no longer available for endless discussions about your worth, they either rise to meet you with respect or fade away. Not explaining yourself also forces accountability onto others. Instead of you carrying the burden of making everything clear, others must reflect on their assumptions and behavior. This shift is powerful. It changes the dynamic from a convince me to a this is who I am. That shift alone raises your perceived value because certainty is attractive and confidence is respected. There will be moments when silence feels uncomfortable. You may worry about being judged, misinterpreted, or disliked. But self-respect is choosing long-term dignity over short-term comfort. Comfort is understanding that clarity does not always come from words, and respect cannot be negotiated through explanations. When you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you start being respected by the right ones. Silence becomes powerful the moment you stop using it as avoidance and start using it as intention. Most people speak to fill gaps, to defend themselves, to ease tension, or to regain control. Silence, when chosen consciously, does the opposite. It removes noise. It removes emotional reactions. It removes the need to prove anything. In that removal, strength becomes visible. Not loud strength, not aggressive strength, but grounded, unshakable strength. Every comment, every accusation, every misunderstanding, you stay trapped in a reactive position. Reaction gives others control over your emotions and your time. Silence takes that control back. It tells people that not everything deserves your energy, and not everyone deserves your response. This unsettles those who are used to provoking reactions because silence denies them feedback. It shows that you are not easily moved, not easily shaken, and not dependent on external validation. Silence also forces people to confront themselves. When you stop explaining, arguing, or defending, others are left alone with their own words and actions. There is nothing for them to push against, nothing for them to twist. In that stillness, their behavior becomes louder. They may replay conversations in their head, question their assumptions, or feel the weight of what they said or did. Silence creates a mirror, and many people are uncomfortable with what they see reflected back. Strength through silence is deeply tied to emotional regulation. Anyone can react emotionally. It takes discipline to pause, to breathe, and to choose not to engage. When you remain silent instead of reacting impulsively, you demonstrate control over yourself. That control is the foundation of real power. People instinctively respect those who are not ruled by their emotions because emotional mastery signals confidence and self-awareness. Silence also changes the balance of power in conversations. The person who speaks the least often holds the most authority. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. You stop flooding conversations with explanations and start allowing space. That space makes people listen more closely when you do choose to speak. Your voice becomes intentional instead of excessive, deliberate instead of defensive. There is also clarity in silence. Words can be misunderstood, misquoted, or used against you. Silence leaves less room for distortion. It protects you from saying things you don't mean in moments of emotion. It protects your dignity. When you choose silence, you choose restraint. And restraint is often mistaken for weakness by those who do not understand it. In reality, restraint is one of the highest forms of strength. Silence communicates boundaries without confrontation. You do not have to announce that you are done explaining or that you refuse to engage in disrespect. Your silence delivers that message clearly. It says, "This is where I stop." Boundaries enforced quietly are often more effective than those defended loudly. They simply exist. In relationships, silence can recalibrate dynamics. When you stop over-communicating, over-explaining, or over-apologizing, others begin to notice the shift. They may feel uneasy at first, especially if they were accustomed to having constant access to your emotions. That unease is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that the dynamic is changing. Silence introduces balance where there was once emotional imbalance. Silence also strengthens your connection to yourself. Instead of externalizing your thoughts and feelings immediately, you give yourself time to process internally. This builds self-trust. You become less dependent on others to validate your experiences. Over time, this inner alignment becomes visible. People sense when someone is rooted within themselves, and that presence alone commands respect. Importantly, silence does not mean suppression. It is not about bottling emotions or avoiding difficult conversations forever. It is about choosing the right moments to speak and the right moments to step back. It is about knowing that not every situation requires your voice. And not every misunderstanding needs correction. Some things resolve themselves when you stop interfering. When you embrace silence as a tool rather than a retreat, it changes how others perceive you. You are no longer seen as someone who can be pulled into every conflict or emotional exchange. You become someone whose presence is steady, whose reactions are measured, and whose energy is not easily accessed. That steadiness is powerful. That restraint is strength. Chasing often disguises itself as effort, loyalty, or passion, but underneath it is usually fear. The fear of being forgotten, replaced, or left behind. When you chase people, opportunities of validation, you place yourself in a position of imbalance. You are moving towards something that is not moving towards you with the same energy. This imbalance is felt immediately, even if it is never spoken aloud. The one who chases is perceived as needy, and neediness quietly lowers value. Choosing yourself means reversing that dynamic. It means deciding that your worth is not dependent on how quickly someone responds, how much attention they give, or whether they choose you back. When you stop chasing, you remove urgency from your behavior. You stop trying to convince others to see what you offer through. Instead, you stand where you are, grounded in the belief that the right people will meet you there without pressure or persuasion. Chasing conditions you to tolerate less than you deserve. You accept mixed signals, delayed responses, and inconsistent effort because you are focused on keeping the connection alive at any cost. Over time, this erodes your standards. You begin to normalize imbalance. You start adjusting yourself, your needs, your boundaries, your expectations, just to maintain proximity. Choosing yourself interrupts this pattern. It reminds you that connection should not require self-abandonment. When you stop chasing, something subtle but powerful happens. You give others the responsibility to choose you. This is uncomfortable at first because it removes control. You are no longer steering the interaction through effort. You are no longer filling gaps with extra attention or reassurance. You allow silence. You allow space. In that space, people reveal their true level of interest and respect. Those who value you will step forward. Those who don't will drift away. Both outcomes are clarity. Choosing yourself also means recognizing that effort should be mutual, not one-sided. Relationships, whether personal or personal, thrive on reciprocity. When you are always the one initiating, fixing, checking in, or pushing things forward, you create dependency rather than connection. Stepping back restores balance. It allows interactions to breathe. It shows that you are not desperate for engagement, but open to it when it is genuine. There is a deep confidence communicated when you stop chasing. It signals that your life is full, your time is valuable, and your identity is not wrapped around being chosen. People are naturally drawn to those who are self-directed. When you prioritize your growth, your peace, and your purpose, you become magnetic, not because you are trying to attract, but because you are no longer trying to prove. Choosing yourself requires discipline, and there will be moments when you want to reach out to explain, to remind someone of your value. In those moments, choosing yourself means pausing and asking whether the action is coming from confidence or fear. Fear-driven actions seek reassurance. Confidence-driven actions maintain dignity. Each time you choose restraint over chasing, you strengthen your self-respect. The shift also changes how you experience rejection. When you chase, rejection feels personal and devastating because your worth is tied to the outcome. When you choose yourself, rejection becomes information. It tells you where alignment exists and where it doesn't. You no longer chase doors that are closing. You turn toward doors that open naturally, without force. When choosing yourself is not about becoming passive or indifferent. It is about intentional engagement. You still show interest, effort, and care, but only where it is met with equal energy. You stop over-investing in situations that under-invest in you. And this selectiveness raises your value because it communicates discernment. It shows that access to you is earned through consistency, not granted through persistence. As you stop chasing, you may notice discomfort in others. Some people are accustomed to being pursued. When that pursuit ends, they may question your change or test your boundaries. This reaction is not a sign that you are wrong. It is evidence that the dynamic has shifted. You are no longer available to be taken for granted. You are no longer operating from lack. Choosing yourself places you back at the center of your life. Your decisions begin to align with your values rather than external approval. Your energy returns to you. Your sense of control strengthens. From this position, connection becomes a choice rather than a necessity. And when you choose instead of chase, your value is no longer something you explain. It is something others feel. Boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They're lines that define where you end and where others begin. When boundaries are unclear or constantly shifting, people interact with you based on convenience rather than respect. They test limits, consciously or unconsciously, to see what they can take, demand, or get away with. Clear boundaries stop this testing. They remove ambiguity. They communicate without aggression or explanation how you expect to be treated. Raising your standard begins internally. Before anyone else can respect your boundaries, you must believe they are justified. Many people struggle with this because they confuse boundaries with selfishness. They worry that saying no will make them seem cold, difficult, or unkind. But boundaries are not about rejecting others. They are about honoring yourself. When you stop betraying your own needs to keep others comfortable, your energy changes. People feel that shift immediately. Clear boundaries teach people what behavior is acceptable and what is not. If you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional neglect, you silently approve of it. People assume that what you allow is what you accept. Boundaries correct this assumption. They show that access to you comes with expectations. Not expectations of perfection, but expectations of basic respect, effort, and consideration. One of the strongest aspects of boundaries is consistency. A boundary stated once but not enforced teaches nothing. A boundary enforced calmly and repeatedly teaches everything. When you maintain your limits without emotional outbursts or excessive explanation, you demonstrate strength. You show that your standards are not reactions, they are principles. This consistency builds credibility. People learn that you mean what you say and that your limits are not negotiable based on mood or pressure. Boundaries also protect your emotional space. Without them, you absorb stress, drama, and responsibilities that do not belong to you. You become the emotional dumping ground, the fixer, the always available support system. Over time, this drains you and lowers how others value your presence because it becomes functional rather than meaningful. Boundaries shift this dynamic. They ensure that your energy is shared, not extracted. Yeah. Raising your standard through boundaries often reveals uncomfortable truths. Some people will respect your limits immediately. Others will push back, guilt trip, or accuse you of changing. This resistance is not a sign that your boundaries are wrong. It is a sign that they disrupt an old pattern that benefited others more than you. Boundaries expose who valued your presence and who valued your compliance. Another important aspect is that boundaries simplify relationships. When expectations are clear, there is less resentment, less confusion, and fewer emotional negotiations. You no longer need to explain why something bothers you repeatedly. Your boundary already speaks for you. This simplicity is powerful. It reduces emotional chaos and creates space for healthier, more balanced connections. Boundaries also raise your standard by filtering your environment. Not everyone will be willing or able to meet you where you stand. When you raise your limits, some people naturally fall away. This is not loss, it is alignment. You are no longer trying to fit into spaces that require you to shrink. You are creating space for relationships that respect your growth. Setting boundaries requires emotional maturity. It means accepting that you cannot control how others react, only how you respond. Some people may misunderstand you. Some may be disappointed. But disappointment is often the price of self-respect. When you choose long-term dignity over short-term approval, your standard rises, and with it, the quality of your connections. Boundaries also strengthen your self-trust. Every time you honor your limits, you reinforce the belief that your needs matter. This inner alignment makes you more confident, more grounded, and less reactive. People sense this stability. They may not always like it, but they will respect it. Raising your standard is not about demanding more from others. It is about demanding more from yourself. It is about refusing to accept treatment that contradicts your values. That structure that holds this standard in place. They quietly but firmly communicate that you are aware of your worth and unwilling to negotiate it, away for comfort, attention, or fear of loss. Being missed means your presence had weight. Being used means your presence was convenient. The difference between the two is not subtle, and it is not accidental. It is shaped by how you allow others to access you, rely on you, and benefit from you. When people miss you, they feel the absence of your energy, your support, your perspective, and your contribution. When people use you, they only feel the inconvenience of losing what you provided for them. When you are used, your value is transactional. Oh, you are appreciated for what you do, not for who you are. People reach out when they need help, advice, emotional comfort, or resources, but disappear when the need is met. There is no curiosity about your inner world, no concern for your limits, and no investment in your well-being. The connection exists only as long as you are useful. This kind of interaction slowly drains your sense of worth because it conditions you to associate love and belonging with service. Being missed is different because it is emotional, not functional. When someone misses you, they feel the lack of your presence even when they do not need anything from you. They notice the silence where your voice used to be, the gap where your understanding used to soften their days. Missing someone means recognizing their value beyond utility. It means realizing that their presence added meaning, not just convenience. The reason many people end up being used is overgiving without discernment. When you give freely, constantly, and without limits, people stop seeing your giving as a choice and start seeing it as an obligation. And they assume it will always be there. This assumption erases gratitude. Gratitude requires awareness, and awareness is dulled by excess access. When you pull back, the difference becomes clear. Those who valued you will feel your absence. Those who used you will feel inconvenience or frustration. Being missed requires restraint. It requires knowing when to step back instead of stepping in. When you resist the urge to always fix, save, or support, you allow others to experience life without your constant presence. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. It gives people the chance to realize what you contributed emotionally, mentally, and energetically. Absence turns invisible effort into visible loss. There is also dignity in being missed. It means you left space behind you, not depletion. When someone uses you, they often leave you exhausted, empty, and questioning your worth. When someone misses you, you remain intact. Your energy is preserved. You are not trying to recover from emotional overextension. You are standing in your fullness, not your fatigue. Choosing to be missed rather than used requires you to tolerate discomfort. You may feel guilty for not always being available. You may worry that pulling back will make you seem uncaring. But being constantly available teaches people to consume you. Being selectively present teaches them to appreciate you. Appreciation cannot exist where consumption is unlimited. Another important distinction is that being used keeps you stuck in cycles. The same patterns repeat, the same people, the same requests, the same emotional labor. Being missed creates movement. It forces change. Either people step up and engage with you more consciously, or they fall away. Both outcomes move you forward. When you stop allowing yourself to be used, you also change how you see yourself. You stop measuring your worth by how needed you are. You stop equating exhaustion with importance. You begin to value peace, reciprocity, and mutual care. This internal shift is critical because people treat you the way you treat yourself first. Being missed also restores balance. It reminds others that relationships are not one-way systems. That's it. When your absence creates impact, it signals that you were giving more than you were receiving. That realization can lead to deeper respect, or it can lead to distance. Either way, it corrects imbalance. You do not need to announce that you are stepping back. You do not need to accuse or to explain. Simply changing your availability, your response patterns, and your emotional investment is enough. Those who genuinely value you will feel it. They will miss you not because you were useful, but because you mattered. Being missed is a sign of presence with substance. Being used is a sign of presence without boundaries. Without boundaries, choosing the former protects your value, your energy, and your sense of self. True value does not demand attention, it draws it. When something is genuinely valuable, it does not need to announce itself loudly or compete aggressively for recognition. People notice it because of how it feels, not because of how it advertises itself. The same principle applies to human value. When you align with who you are, honor your boundaries, and live from self-respect, attraction becomes natural rather than forced. Attraction rooted in authenticity is fundamentally different from attraction built on effort. When you try to be liked, approved of, or chosen, your actions are driven by external outcomes. This creates tension in your energy. People can sense when someone is trying too hard, even if they cannot explain why. That tension repels rather than attracts. True value, on the other hand, feels calm. It feels stable. It does not rush or cling. It allows interest to develop organically. Natural attraction is a byproduct of inner alignment. When your actions match your values, you move through the world with consistency. You do not shapeshift to fit different expectations. You do not compromise your standards to gain acceptance. This consistency builds trust, and trust is deeply attractive. People are drawn to those who know who they are and do not apologize for it. There is also magnetism in self-sufficiency. When you are emotionally grounded and not dependent on constant validation, your presence feels complete. You are not asking others to fill gaps within you. You are sharing, not seeking. This shifts the dynamic from need to choice. People are far more attracted to those who choose connection rather than require it. True value also attracts because it creates safety. When you are comfortable with yourself, others feel comfortable around you. There is no pressure to perform, impress, or compete. Your presence allows people to be themselves. This emotional safety is rare, and rarity increases value. People remember how you made them feel, and that feeling becomes the reason they are drawn back to you. Another aspect of natural attraction is selectiveness. When you do not seek everyone's approval, your attention becomes meaningful. People sense when they are chosen rather than merely accommodated. This selectiveness communicates discernment. It shows that you are not desperate for connection, but intentional about it. Intentionality raises value because it signals standards. True value also withstands distance. You do not lose relevance when you are not constantly present. Your absence does not erase your impact. In fact, distance often strengthens attraction because it allows reflection. People remember interactions with you, not because you demanded space in their lives, but because your presence had depth. You are not constantly adjusting to keep people interested. You allow relationships to evolve naturally. This ease is appealing. It contrasts sharply with dynamics driven by chasing, proving, or performing. Importantly, true value does not attract everyone, and it is not meant to. It attracts those who resonate with your frequency, your standards, and your direction. When you stop trying to appeal to everyone, you stop diluting yourself. Clarity sharpens your presence. People who align with you feel it strongly, and those who do not quietly fall away. Natural attraction is also reinforced by self-focus. When you invest in your growth, purpose, and well-being, your life gains momentum. Momentum is attractive. It signals direction. People are drawn to those who are moving forward, not because they want to ride along, but because forward movement inspires respect. You do not have to advertise your value. You do not have to explain it or defend it. When you live it consistently, others feel it without being told. That feeling is what draws them in. That pull is what lasts. And this is the quiet truth behind it all. When you stop trying to be everywhere, stop proving, stop chasing, and stop overgiving, you don't lose people. You lose illusions. What remains are connections rooted in respect, not convenience, interest, not dependency. Letting them miss you is not withdrawal. It is alignment. It is the moment you step fully into your worth and allow life to respond accordingly. Your value was never meant to be explained or negotiated. It was meant to be felt.